Tears of the Kingdom isn't just Breath of the Wild with a new feature, is it? It is very much built around the new feature, and which is smooshing objects together to make other useful objects.
Yeah, I think that Tears of the Kingdom, the most exciting thing about it was how much it leaves behind some of the most influential parts of Breath of the Wild, like you say. That going into it, I'd wondered, I think, like a lot of people, how fresh, or on the opposite, how samey is this going to feel? Because not just because most of us have played 100 hours of Breath of the Wild, whether that was 6 years ago when it first came out, or more recently whenever you've jumped onto a Switch. I think the core mechanics of the game, like you say, with the traversal and how things interact with each other, have been so widely copied or adopted by so many different things. A game a week comes out where everything that you can climb, you have that little circle that denotes how much grip strength you've got left and all of this sort of stuff. You just have to look at something like Genshin Impact to see there's the glider, there's the interaction of elements, there's all of this sort of stuff that we see all of the time that is, if not invented, well, definitely not invented, but very much popularized by Breath of the Wild. And I thought, like, how are we going to come into this and still feel fresh and exciting and, like you say, an innovator? But I just thought it was quite amazing how they have all of these really influential systems and they just sort of go, you don't really do that anymore. Rather than clambering up the side of everything all of the time, the Link has a new power where he can just kind of Superman up to the top.
Since I just used recall on the fallen rock, I can now rise into the sky. We're a lot closer to the Sky Islands. Let's use the paraglider to reach one of them. There are a few other Sky Islands floating here too.
On the one hand, make all sorts of new stuff in combat, but on the other hand, makes you build all of these fantastic cars, planes, trains, automobiles, all this sort of stuff that you saw in the trailer. It's a fiddly system. Things snap together quite well, but you're doing a lot of finicky kind of little twiddling. I don't want to come out of it so completely sycophantic that I'm saying that it's this incredible game-changing thing. It does take a little bit of getting used to.
We're going to get so many complaints if you're not completely sycophantic, so just be careful, right?
Yeah, but you make all of these kind of haphazard, wonky-wheeled contraptions, and you're just flying around, you're swooping into stuff, and that's what I say, that so much of Breath of the Wild was this kind of bucolic sort of exploration of free soloing up the side of a big cliff. Whereas Tears of the Kingdom, it just sort of goes, well, you can still do that if you want, or you could build a fire-breathing hovercraft and fly up if you want. And it's like, I guess I will. Yeah, it's a very physics-based game as well, and all of those things just seem to slot together. It's really something to sink your teeth into. It's great. It kind of feels like the only thing that could feasibly go wrong with Tears of the Kingdom is on that performance side, doesn't it? I genuinely don't know how it's going to perform right at the end, or when it comes out when people can play it, because you never know when you're playing these previews how much of it is a vertical slice, how much of it is a put together demo or this sort of stuff, or whether it's a save within the full game. But what I've played from it and what you can see from the footage of me playing it that we're speaking over right now, the performance seems really good, just as it was in Breath of the Wild 6 years ago, even with the really massive elements of verticality that you can get, all of the gliding, all of the flying, all of the everything.
People might think because it looks so similar, there is a worry that this is just Breath of the Wild 2, and it very much isn't.
Yeah, a part that emphasizes that for me is the combat. That, like I say, it's a very physics-based game, and it was very much like that in Breath of the Wild. The fuse mechanic, again, really adds an extra dimension to it. So one of the things that I did in my preview time was I had to assault this bokoblin stronghold, and I could sneak up if I wanted to. I could try and do all sorts of different things. And stupidly, what I decided to do was make a giant fan-powered car and completely blow the element of surprise by just driving it into them. So they saw me coming a mile off and tried to squish me with this giant spiky ball, which Link also has like a rewind power that I could send this ball flying back at them. But once I'd got to the bokoblin stronghold, you can So you've got all of the same kind of weapons. You have like rusty claymore and big stick and all this sort of stuff. But with the fuse power, when you beat up one of those moblins, the tall ones with the big narwhal horn, they'll drop that when you beat them, and you can then fuse it onto the end of your big stick, and then you've got a big pointy stick, which is a lot better. And then you can poke holes in all of the other ones. But the enemies themselves are always doing this as well. They can fuse stuff too.
Oh, right. I didn't realize that.
I was fighting like a big Hinox guy, which is like the sort of really big ones. And the aforementioned big spiky balls, he had his big club, and he just put the big spiky ball on his club. And so he's coming at me with this big spiky ball, and then I had to go find another one, and I put it on the end of my sword. So we had this kind of lightsaber duel, trading blows with big spiky balls. And I said to you earlier that it's a bit like Tom and Jerry, because it is so physics based that you just bonking these guys on the head with a frying pan, and they kind of go and then they fall over. And you can just, what it emphasizes to me is that it's kind of the opposite of all of these big narrative open world games that you see. Something like, I don't know, Assassin's Creed Valhalla or whatever, where there aren't a huge amount of play mechanics other than press triangle on this man to talk, and then the kind of a bit of one button combat kind of thing. It's very play first, that it's built around this physics system where you can, where like we say, all kinds of elements can react, and the wind blows out the fire, but that you can also spread it to different parts of grass, and the water will put it out, and all this sort of stuff. But you can also bonk people on the head, and they'll fall over, and they'll fall off a cliff, which will knock a load of boxes over, which will spill out a load of bombs or something, which you can then fuse onto the end of your pole and then throw the pole, and it turns it into an explosive thing. There's so many different ways to interact chaotically with all the different stuff going on.
The one big complaint about Breath of the Wild from people who don't understand how games work is weapon degradation.
Yeah.
I would say that this system, where you're kind of going through the game just fashioning weapons out of it's just two things. Surely that further alleviates any concerns about that, because it's if you really get attached to a spiky pole with a ball at the end of it, that's not really the spirit of the game. The spirit of the game is invention.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a lot more people will understand that this time.
The weapon degradation is still there.
Yeah.
But in the sense of you're smushing two things to get you've got your weapon, and then you're smushing something onto the top of it. It is the thing that on top of it that breaks off.
Yeah.
And obviously your weapon can still break if you use it to the point of breaking it, but if you smush something onto the top of it, it kind of heals it.
Oh, right.
So that's how that works. So if your bronze claymore is about to break, and you pick up a bokoblin horn and you smush it onto the top of it, it is a healed claymore with a bokoblin horn on it. And then if you poke in stuff with the horn will eventually break, and then you'll have the original bronze claymore again.
So it really does sort things out for those people as well.
The loop that I saw was more along the lines of the weapons that you have equipped are more a platform for sticking stuff on top of. And you can kind of cycle through them in that sense, rather than getting really attached to a specific elemental weapon or whatever. There's another power that we've not talked about, which is called like Ultra Hand. It's kind of like Mage Hand in D&D or whatever, where you can kind of pick stuff up. It's the equivalent of telekinesis from Breath of the Wild, and you can manipulate stuff with this as well, like you saw in the trailer, where you fuse your bow and arrow with like one of the bat eyes to make it a homing arrow. There's so many different options that it's very chaotic and very gameplay led and very kind of exploratory in a different way to the open world sense of Breath of the Wild, and that's what it's all about, just smushing stuff together and see what happens. The old kind of gaming preview cliche of only just scratching the surface kind of comes into my mind, and obviously I wouldn't use that in any way other than ironically, and by bringing it up ironically, that definitely does not mean that I'm using it unironically.
Is it the Dark Souls of vehicle builders?
Exactly.
So it looks to be, like Breath of the Wild, a very accessible, play first Zelda game. It's probably going to be game of the year. Nothing's going to touch it in terms of its innovation, its inventiveness. And I think people who aren't making Zelda games probably really hate people who make Zelda games.
Yeah, like you say, it just has such a great toolkit of doing fun stuff. There are so many massive open world games that feel unwieldy in terms of, I want to do this, but I can't interact with this stuff. Things don't seem to remember me or aren't very reactive in terms of being very gamey. I need to go stealthily through this area, so I just put my head up, I just do this or do that. It doesn't feel like very reactive, like I say, whereas it just feels like the other way around in Tears of the Kingdom, that if you drive your fan-powered hot rod past the Bokoblin stronghold, they're going to come out and chase you.
It's great. It sounds like Wacky Races, like it's got that specific energy, or like you say, like a mad Top Gear challenge. All right, lovely. Well, that comes out on May the 12th.
It's really close.
It's very weird to be doing a preview this close, actually, isn't it?
We did one last year for God of War at a similar distance.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
A very similar game in terms of Ragnarok was one of the best games that I played in ages, in terms of just being a really solid, interesting, graphically amazing, mechanically deep and complex kind of game. And Tears of the Kingdom feels like that too.
Yeah.
That it has an almost kind of unassailable quality to it.
Yeah.
That, like I've already said, it almost feels like the only thing that could be bad is that it just doesn't run.
Yeah. We don't know the nature of the demo you played, whether it was a save within the world or a vertical slice or whatever.
It's easy to be hyperbolic about how it's a completely different game, but it is still in the same series. It's still built with the same building blocks. But there is a huge amount of new stuff, game-changing new stuff as well. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how far that goes.
I've been Jim Trinker for VG247, and you should definitely like and subscribe, because if you don't, you smell. Check out the website, check out the podcast, check it all out. Check it out like it's Supermarket Sweet, man. I'll speak to you later.